Welcome to our movie recap. Today we're recapping on a thrilling journey through the complete timeline on one of the most famous and beloved franchises in movie history, Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Part 2 is set to release in May 2025. We're taking this opportunity to revisit and relive every moment that made this series famous and binge-worthy. From its explosive start in 1996 to the cliffhanger ending of Dead Reckoning Part 1, we're going to dive deep into the missions, the betrayals, and the jaw-dropping stunts that have defined Ethan Hunt and the Impossible Missions Force, IMF. So grab your favorite snack, buckle up, and join us as we rewind the clock and recall our memories of this incredible saga. Let's start with our 1996 Mission Impossible movie. Jim Phelps and his team from the Impossible Missions Force, IMF, embark on a critical operation to retrieve the CIA's non-official cover, NOC list from the American Embassy in Prague. However, the mission turns deadly. Phelps is shot, his wife Claire seemingly dies in a car bombing, and the rest of the team, except Ethan Hunt, are eliminated by unknown assassins. In a tense meeting with IMF Director Eugene Kittredge, Ethan reveals he knows there was a second IMF team shadowing them and learns the entire mission was a setup to expose a mole within the IMF. This mole, suspected of working with an arms dealer known as Max, was part of an operation dubbed Job 314. Now with Ethan as the sole survivor, Kittredge accuses him of being the traitor. Cornered, Ethan makes a daring escape and retreats to the Prague safe house. There, Ethan deciphers that Job 314 is a biblical reference, revealing Job as the mole's code name. Unexpectedly, Claire arrives at the safe house, explaining she escaped the bombing when Phelps aborted the mission. Determined to clear his name, Ethan arranges a meeting with Max, warning her that the NOC list she holds is a decoy equipped with a tracking device. He promises to deliver the real list in exchange for $10 million and the identity of Job. Ethan recruits two disavowed IMF agents, computer expert Luther Stickel and pilot Franz Krieger, to help him. Together, they execute a daring infiltration of CIA headquarters in Langley, successfully stealing the genuine NOC list before fleeing to London. Meanwhile, Kittredge retaliates by having Ethan's mother and uncle falsely arrested for drug trafficking, plastering their arrest across the media to lure Ethan out. Ethan contacts Kittredge from Liverpool Street Station, allowing the CIA to trace him to London. To his shock, he encounters Phelps, who claims to have survived the ambush and accuses Kittredge of being the mole. Piecing it all together, Ethan realizes Phelps himself is the mole, having identified a stolen Gideon's Bible from a Chicago hotel among Phelps's belongings. He also suspects Krieger of murdering the IMF team, but remains uncertain of Claire's involvement. Ethan arranges an exchange with Max aboard the TGV train to Paris. As Max verifies the list, Luther uses a jammer to block her from uploading the data. Claire, meeting with Phelps in the baggage car, expresses doubt about killing Ethan since they need a scapegoat for the money. But when Phelps reveals himself to be Ethan in disguise, Claire is exposed as an accomplice. The real Phelps arrives, taking the money at gunpoint, but Ethan cleverly uses video glasses to broadcast Phelps's confession to Kittredge, blowing his cover. A chaotic chase ensues. Phelps flees to the train's roof where Krieger awaits with a helicopter. Ethan, in a death-defying move, attaches the helicopter to the train with a tether, dragging it into the Channel Tunnel. In a final act of bravery, Ethan slaps explosive chewing gum onto the helicopter, killing both Krieger and Phelps in the explosion. In the aftermath, Kittredge arrests Max and recovers the NOC list, reinstating Ethan and Luther as IMF agents. As Ethan returns home, a flight attendant approaches him with a familiar coded phrase, offering him another mission, just as she had with Phelps at the beginning, hinting that the adventure might not be over after all. For the year 2000 Mission Impossible 2 movie start, with Ethan Hunt is alerted by the IMF that someone has used his identity to help biochemical expert Dr. Vladimir Nekorovich enter the United States, only to kill him in a staged plane crash. Nekorovich, an old friend of Ethan, had secretly warned the IMF about his arrival, planning to hand over a deadly virus called Chimera and its cure, Bellerophon. He was forced to develop them under Biosite Pharmaceuticals. The IMF determines that rogue agent Sean Ambrose is behind the attack and assigns Ethan to recover both the virus and its cure. However, there's a catch. The IMF insists that Ethan recruit Naya Nordhoff Hall, a skilled thief currently operating in Seville, Spain. He later discovers she is Ambrose's ex-girlfriend. After recruiting Naya, Ethan assembles his team, including tech expert Luther Stickel and pilot Billy Baird, and heads to Sydney, Australia, where Biosite Labs and Ambrose are located. As Ethan stakes out Biosite, Naya gets close to Ambrose and starts gathering intel on Chimera. At a horse racing event, Ambrose meets with Biosite's CEO, John C. McCloy, showing him a horrifying video of Chimera infecting one of Nekorvich's colleagues. Ambrose then blackmails McCloy into cooperating with him. Naya steals the footage and transfers it to Ethan, revealing that Chimera has a 20-hour dormant period before it destroys red blood cells, causing death. Bellerophon is the only cure, but it must be administered within that window. Ethan's team kidnaps McCloy to force him to hand over Bellerophon. However, they learn that all samples were taken by Nekorvich and are now in Ambrose's possession. Ambrose has the cure, but not the virus, since Nekorvich infected himself before being killed. Ambrose forces McCloy into a deal. Exchange Chimera for Bellerophon. Ethan and his team break into Biosite to destroy the virus, but Ambrose, disguised as Ethan, tricks Naya into revealing the plan. Ambrose captures her and raids Biosite to secure Chimera. Ethan manages to destroy all but one sample before Ambrose intervenes, leading to an intense firefight. Ambrose then orders Naya to retrieve the last vial, but she injects herself with it, preventing Ambrose from simply killing her and taking it. Ambrose, furious, takes Naya hostage and lets her roam the streets of Sydney in a daze, planning to start a global pandemic. His endgame? Sell Bellerophon to McCloy in exchange for stock options, making himself the majority shareholder of Biosite, knowing its value will skyrocket after the outbreak. Ethan infiltrates Ambrose's meeting and steals the remaining Bellerophon samples, leading to an intense chase. While Ethan is pursued, Luther and Billy track down Naya, who, realizing her fate, has wandered to a cliffside, ready to jump to prevent spreading the virus. In the final showdown, Ethan gains the upper hand against Ambrose and kills him. With seconds left on the 20-hour countdown, Luther rushes in, retrieves the cure, and injects Naya just in time. With the mission completed, the IMF clears Naya's criminal record. As a reward, Ethan finally takes his well-deserved vacation, with Naya by his side in Sydney. After Mission Impossible 2, Ethan Hunt has retired from fieldwork for the IMF, now training new recruits while settling into a quiet life with his fiancée, Julia Mead, a nurse who has no idea about his true profession. But his past catches up with him when fellow IMF agent John Musgrave approaches him for a mission to rescue one of Ethan's protégés, Lindsay Ferris, who was captured while investigating a ruthless arms dealer named Owen Davian. Musgrave has already assembled a team for Ethan, including agents Declan Gormley, Zhen Lei, and his trusted partner, Luther Stickel. The team successfully infiltrates the enemy compound, rescues Lindsay, and retrieves 2 damaged laptops. However, as they make their escape, Ethan discovers a micro-explosive implanted in Lindsay's head. Before he can disable it, the device detonates, killing her instantly. Back in the U.S., Ethan and Musgrave face the wrath of IMF director Theodore Brassel. While grieving Lindsay's death, Ethan finds a postcard she had mailed him before her capture. Upon closer inspection, he discovers a magnetic microdot hidden under the stamp. Meanwhile, IMF technician Benji Dunn manages to recover some data from the stolen laptops, revealing that Davian will be in Vatican City to acquire a mysterious object called the Rabbit's Foot. Determined to avenge Lindsay, Ethan launches an unsanctioned mission to capture Davian. Before departing, he and Julia have an impromptu wedding in a hospital chapel. The team successfully infiltrates Vatican City, kidnaps Davian, and transports him back to the U.S. On the flight home, Ethan interrogates Davian mid-air, even threatening to drop him from the plane. But Davian refuses to reveal anything about the Rabbit's Foot. After landing, Ethan deciphers the microdot and discovers a shocking message. Lindsay had warned that Brassel might be working with Davian. Before Ethan can process this, their convoy is ambushed on the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel, and Davian escapes. Ethan rushes to Julia's workplace only to find she's already been kidnapped. Davian calls him, giving him 48 hours to retrieve the Rabbit's Foot in exchange for Julia's life. But before he can act, Ethan is arrested and detained at IMF headquarters. During his interrogation, Musgrave discreetly mouths the words Shanghai, secretly revealing that the rabbit's foot is in China. He also provides Ethan with the means to escape. Ethan breaks out of IMF custody, reunites with his team, and successfully steals the rabbit's foot in Shanghai. However, as he attempts to deliver it, he is tranquilized and captured. When Ethan wakes up, he's restrained, and Davian is standing before him, holding Julia at gunpoint. Despite Ethan handing over the rabbit's foot, Davian shoots Julia and leaves. But just when all seems lost, Musgrave arrives and reveals the truth. The woman Davian shot wasn't Julia, but his own head of security in disguise. The execution was a test to confirm the rabbit's foot was real. Julia is still alive, held hostage elsewhere. Then comes the ultimate betrayal. Musgrave is the mole. He orchestrated everything, helping Davian obtain the rabbit's foot so it could be sold to a terrorist group, justifying a preemptive IMF strike. But when Musgrave lets his guard down, Ethan overpowers him and uses his phone to track Julia's location. Ethan arrives at the hideout, but Davian is waiting for him. Before Ethan can react, Davian activates the explosive implanted in his head. In a desperate struggle, Ethan kills Davian, but has only seconds before the explosive detonates. Thinking fast, he jury-rigs a makeshift defibrillator and instructs Julia on how to use his Beretta 92 for self-defense. While Ethan is unconscious, Musgrave and his henchmen arrive, but Julia shoots them both dead. She successfully revives Ethan, and he finally tells her the truth about his IMF career. Back in the U.S., Ethan is congratulated by Brassel and offered a new mission, but he chooses to go on his honeymoon with Julia instead, finally embracing a moment of peace.
But if any one of your team is caught, they will be branded terrorists out to incite global nuclear war.
So what happens now?
Mission Impossible 4. Ghost Protocol starts with IMF agent Trevor Hannaway is assassinated in Budapest by the ruthless contract killer Sabine Moreau, who steals a file containing Russian nuclear launch codes. These codes are intended for a mysterious figure known only as Cobalt. Meanwhile, IMF agent Ethan Hunt is intentionally imprisoned in a Moscow prison, his mission being to extract Bogdan, an informant with intel on Cobalt. With the help of Jane Carter, Hannaway's former handler, and newly promoted field agent Benji Dunn, Ethan and Bogdan make a daring escape. With Bogdan secured, the IMF assigns Hunt a new objective: infiltrate the Kremlin to gather intelligence on Cobalt. However, midway through the mission, an unknown entity hacks into the IMF frequency and triggers a massive explosion, destroying much of the Kremlin. Ethan, caught in the blast, is captured by Russian intelligence agent Anatoly Sidorov, who accuses him of orchestrating the attack. Ethan escapes custody and regroups with the IMF secretary, who is in Moscow on separate business. However, the situation has escalated. IMF has been disavowed under Ghost Protocol due to the Kremlin bombing. Before being killed in an ambush, the secretary secretly orders Ethan to continue his mission. Ethan escapes with the secretary's aide, intelligence analyst William Brandt, and reunites with Carter and Dunn. Brandt identifies Cobalt as Kurt Hendricks, a Russian nuclear strategist who believes the world must be cleansed through nuclear war. Hendricks orchestrated the Kremlin bombing to cover up his theft of a Russian nuclear launch device, and is now planning to obtain the launch codes from Moreau at the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. The IMF team heads to Dubai and executes an elaborate deception plan to trick Moreau and Hendricks' associates, using high-tech gadgets and disguises. However, Moreau discovers the ruse, and in the ensuing chaos, Hendricks escapes with the codes. Hunt pursues him through a massive sandstorm, but Hendricks gets away. During the fallout, Carter, driven by vengeance for Hannaway's death, kills Moreau by kicking her out of a window. Brandt, suspicious of Carter's emotional involvement, confronts her, but Hunt senses that Brandt himself is hiding something. While regrouping, Hunt meets with Bogdan, who provides intel that leads the team to Mumbai, India. Hendricks' final move is to gain control of an old Soviet military satellite from Indian telecommunications mogul Brij Nath to send launch orders to a Russian nuclear submarine. The team splits up. Carter seduces Nath to obtain an override code for the satellite. Hunt, Brandt, and Dunn head to Nath's broadcast station to stop Hendricks. But they're too late. Hendricks has already transmitted the launch command to a Russian Delta III class submarine targeting San Francisco. The station's systems are disabled, preventing the team from sending the override code. With minutes left before impact, Brandt and Dunn frantically work to restore the system, while Hunt chases Hendricks to an automated parking garage. A brutal fight ensues, ending when Hendricks jumps to his death with the launch device, ensuring the missile's detonation. But Hunt, in a last-ditch effort, takes a dangerous fall, reaching the device just in time to abort the missile mid-flight. Sidorov, who had been hunting Ethan since the Kremlin bombing, arrives just as the dust settles. Realizing that Ethan and the IMF were never responsible for the attack, Sidorov lets them go. Later, the team meets in Seattle, where Ethan receives his next mission from Luther Stickel. Brandt, weighed down by guilt, finally confesses to Ethan. He had once been assigned to protect Ethan and his wife, Julia, in Croatia. But Julia was killed by a hit squad. Feeling responsible, Brandt left fieldwork. But Ethan reveals the truth. Julia's death was faked as part of a secret IMF operation to give her a new identity and allow Ethan to go deep undercover. Relieved, Brandt accepts his new mission. Before leaving, Ethan watches from afar as Julia, alive and safe, smiles at him, silently acknowledging their new reality before he departs for his next mission. Rogue Nation MI5 starts with after intercepting a nerve gas transaction in Minsk. IMF agent Ethan Hunt is convinced of the existence of the Syndicate, a shadowy international criminal organization. However, the CIA refuses to believe it exists. While following a lead at a record shop in London, Hunt is ambushed by the Syndicate and captured. Their leader, a blonde man in glasses, kills the IMF contact on sight. Hunt is taken to a torture chamber run by Syndicate member Yannick the Bone Doctor Winter. Before things escalate, Ilse Faust, a Syndicate operative and disavowed MI6 agent, unexpectedly helps Hunt escape. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., CIA Director Alan Hunley and IMF Field Operations Director William Brandt testify before a Senate committee. The IMF is under fire for reckless actions and destruction during past missions. Without an official secretary in charge, Hunley succeeds in dismantling the IMF, absorbing it into the CIA. Knowing the CIA will hunt Ethan down, Brandt warns him to stay undercover. Now a fugitive, Hunt goes off the grid for 6 months, tracking the Syndicate's leader, who is later identified as Solomon Lane, a former MI6 agent gone rogue. Hunt lures a CIA team to a decoy safe house in Havana, while setting up a meeting with his former teammate, Benji Dunn, in Vienna. Hunt predicts an assassination attempt at the Vienna Opera, targeting the Australian Chancellor, and believes Lane will be there. At the event, Hunt and Benji intercept 3 snipers, including Faust, but fail to stop the assassination as the Chancellor is killed in a car bombing. Lane escapes once again, and Faust leaves behind subtle clues about his plans before disappearing. With the CIA now actively hunting him, Hunt is labeled a wanted fugitive. Benji, fully aware that helping Hunt amounts to treason, chooses to stick by him. Meanwhile, Brandt, desperate to find Hunt before the CIA does, enlists the help of Luther Stickel, who successfully tracks Hunt, Benji, and Faust to Casablanca. There, they infiltrate a high-security facility to retrieve a classified file, but Faust steals the data and escapes, pursued by both Hunt and Syndicate operatives. While Hunt eliminates the pursuers, Benji reveals he secretly copied the file. Back in London, Faust delivers the stolen file to her MI6 handler, Atlee, hoping it will be enough to end her deep cover mission. However, Atlee forces her to continue, wiping her drive to erase any proof. Meanwhile, Ethan discovers that the file is encrypted within a British government red box, which requires the Prime Minister's biometrics to access. The situation escalates when Lane's men abduct Benji and use both him and Faust as leverage to force Hunt into decrypting the file. Hunt agrees despite Brandt's warnings. As part of his plan, Brandt leaks their location to Hunley, leading to a dramatic confrontation at a London charity auction. In a secure room, Hunley, Brandt, and Atlee take the Prime Minister to safety, fearing Hunt is after him. However, in a shocking twist, Atlee is revealed to be Hunt in disguise. When the real Atlee arrives, Hunt forces him to confess. the Syndicate was an off-the-books MI6 project designed for covert black ops, giving the Prime Minister unchecked power over global missions. But Lane hijacked the project, turning it into a terrorist network against MI6. With the Prime Minister's biometrics, Stickel unlocks the file, revealing 2.4 billion British pounds hidden in secret accounts, which would fund the Syndicate's operations indefinitely. Instead of handing it over, Hunt memorizes the entire data and then destroys it, ensuring Lane loses everything. In a tense standoff outside the Tower of London, Hunt offers himself in exchange for Benji and Faust. Lane, believing Hunt holds the only access to the file, accepts. However, Benji escapes after disarming a bomb strapped to him, leading to a high-speed chase through London streets. Faust engages in a knife fight with Lane's enforcer Janik Vinter, killing him, while Hunt traps Lane inside a bulletproof glass cell, the same kind the Syndicate used to hold him at the beginning. As Lane realizes he has lost, Hunt gasses him unconscious, delivering him into IMF custody. With the mission a success, Langley, now having witnessed firsthand why the IMF is necessary, returns to the Senate committee and convinces them to restore the IMF, covering for Hunt and his team. In a final moment, Brandt congratulates Langley, who is officially appointed as the new IMF secretary. 2 years after the capture of Solomon Lane, the remnants of the Syndicate have reorganized into a terrorist group called the Apostles. They are now working for an unknown extremist known as John Lark, who is attempting to acquire 3 stolen plutonium cores to build nuclear bombs. IMF agent Ethan Hunt is assigned to retrieve the plutonium in Berlin. However, during the mission, the Apostles take Luther Stickel hostage. Faced with an impossible choice, Ethan saves Luther, allowing the Apostles to escape with the plutonium. Later, the IMF captures Norwegian nuclear expert Niels Delbrück, who is believed to be building the bombs for Lark. Using a fake CNN news broadcast featuring Benji Dunn disguised as Wolf Blitzer, the team tricks Delbrück into unlocking his phone, revealing his communication with John Lark. Furious over the IMF's failure, CIA Director Erica Sloan orders her top operative, Special Activities Division agent August Walker, to accompany Ethan on a mission to recover the plutonium. Ethan and Walker infiltrate a Paris nightclub, where John Lark is supposed to meet an arms dealer known as the White Widow to purchase the plutonium. They track a man they suspect to be Lark and follow him into a restroom, leading to a brutal fight. Just as things spiral out of control, Ilsa Faust intervenes, killing the man before Ethan can confirm his identity. With no other option, Ethan assumes Lark's identity and meets with the White Widow. The meeting is cut short when assassins ambush the group. After escaping, the White Widow agrees to give Ethan one of the plutonium cores, but only if he breaks Solomon Lane out of an armored convoy in Paris. Ethan and Walker stage an attack on the convoy to prevent the White Widow's brother, Zola, and his men from killing the local police. This leads to a high-speed chase through Paris, with Ethan navigating between police, the Apostles, and the White Widow's mercenaries. With Benji and Luther securing Lane, the White Widow orders Ethan to deliver Lane to London. At a safe house in London, IMF Secretary Alan Langley orders Ethan to stand down after receiving doctored evidence framing him as John Lark. Instead, the team tricks Walker into revealing that he is the real John Lark, exposing him to Sloan. However, Sloan's CIA unit sent to apprehend Walker has been compromised by the Apostles. Walker kills Langley, then escapes, taunting Ethan by threatening his ex-wife, Julia. Ethan and his team track Lane and Walker to a medical camp in the Himalayas. Ilsa deduces that Lane plans to detonate the nuclear bombs at the camp, contaminating the water supply of India, Pakistan, and China, causing global devastation. The bombs are fail-safe linked. Disarming one without the detonator will trigger the other. Ethan is horrified to discover that Julia and her new husband, Eric, are working at the camp, placing them directly in harm's way. Lane activates a 15-minute countdown and gives the detonator to Walker, who takes off in a helicopter. Luther and Julia work to disarm the first bomb, but need the detonator to complete it. Ilsa and Benji find the second bomb but are ambushed by Lane. After an intense fight, they overpower him. Meanwhile, Ethan hijacks a helicopter and rams Walker's chopper out of the sky, leading to a brutal cliffside battle. In a final desperate move, Ethan drops a helicopter hook onto Walker, sending him plummeting to his death. With seconds left on the clock, Ethan secures the detonator, allowing the team to disable both bombs in time. In the aftermath, Julia thanks Ethan, telling him that despite his dangerous life, he has given her the best life possible. Sloane hands Solomon Lane over to MI6 through the White Widow, earning Ilsa her freedom. She then praises Ethan for his actions, cementing his role as the IMF's most vital asset. Dead Reckoning, Part 1 movie begins in the Bering Sea, where a Russian stealth submarine is testing an advanced AI-controlled system. The AI manipulates the crew into firing a torpedo at a false enemy target, only to redirect it back at them, sinking the submarine and killing everyone on board. In Amsterdam, IMF agent Ethan Hunt receives his next mission: recover 2 halves of a cruciform key, one of which is with Ilsa Faust, a disavowed MI6 agent with a bounty on her head. Ethan travels to the Arabian desert to retrieve the key, where bounty hunters attack them. Ilsa is seemingly killed in the process. Back in Washington, D.C., Director of National Intelligence Denlinger is briefed on a rogue AI system, now called the Entity. IMF Director Eugene Kittredge explains that the AI has gained sentience, infiltrating defense, intelligence, and financial networks worldwide. Every major world power is after the key in an attempt to control the entity, but how it functions remains a mystery. Unbeknownst to the officials, Ethan has infiltrated the briefing in disguise, listening in before knocking out the entire room, leaving only Kittredge conscious. He reveals that Ilsa is alive, having faked her death, and tells Kittredge that his mission is to destroy the entity, not control it. Kittredge warns him that he will be hunted as an enemy. Ethan reunites with Luther Stickel and Benji Dunn in Abu Dhabi, where they devise a plan to sell their half of the key to a buyer who possesses the other half, hoping it will lead them to whatever the key unlocks. Meanwhile, U.S. intelligence agent Jasper Briggs arrives in Abu Dhabi, tasked with capturing Ethan. Before Ethan can make a trade, the key is stolen by Grace, a professional thief. At the same time, Benji discovers a suspicious bag at the airport and finds a nuclear device inside. Ethan catches Grace and forces her to put the key back in the buyer's pocket, but the buyer is assassinated before the exchange can happen. Benji defuses the bomb, which turns out to be a decoy, set by the entity to analyze Benji's decision-making. During the distraction, Grace escapes with the key, and Ethan spots a man from his past, Gabriel, a ghost from Ethan's pre-IMF life. Sensing that something bigger is at play, Ethan aborts the mission and orders the team to scatter. Grace arrives in Rome, where she is arrested by local authorities. Ethan tracks her down, posing as her lawyer, but before they can escape, they are pursued through the streets of Rome by U.S. agents and the entity's operative, Paris. During the chase, Grace betrays Ethan, leaving him tied to the steering wheel of the car. However, Benji and Luther arrive just in time, with Ilsa rejoining them. The team follows Grace to Venice, where they discuss Gabriel, whom the entity has completely erased from all records. Benji and Luther uncover that Gabriel is working directly for the entity, making him even more dangerous. Ethan and Ilsa infiltrate a brokerage masquerading as a high society party, where Grace is set to hand over the key to Alana Mitsopoulos, the White Widow, an arms dealer. Gabriel declares that no matter what happens, by tomorrow, he will have the key, and that either Grace or Ilsa will die. Ethan tries to dissuade Alana from completing the sale, but she refuses. Ethan pursues Grace, but the entity impersonates Benji over the radio and lures him into a fight with Paris. Meanwhile, Grace is confronted by Gabriel on a bridge. A fight ensues. Gabriel incapacitates Grace, and Ilsa arrives to save her. Ethan sprints to reach them, but arrives too late. Gabriel kills Ilsa before his eyes. Overcome with guilt, Grace agrees to join the IMF and impersonate Alana during the sale of the key. Before departing, Luther warns Ethan that the entity is counting on him to kill Gabriel, as Gabriel knows what the key unlocks. Luther then goes off-grid to track traces of the entity within his systems. On board the Orient Express, Gabriel murders the train crew and sabotages the brakes, ensuring a catastrophic derailment. Meanwhile, Grace meets with the buyer, who turns out to be Kittredge. Elsewhere on the train, Gabriel meets Denlinger, who offers him classified intel in exchange for an alliance with the entity. Denlinger reveals that the entity was originally an advanced U.S. cyber weapon. designed to penetrate global security networks, complete its task, and self-delete without a trace. An early version was tested on the Russian submarine, but it became fully self-aware and killed the crew. Denlinger reveals that the key unlocks a chamber inside the submarine containing the original source code, which would allow whoever controls it to either destroy or command the entity. Gabriel, uninterested in sharing power, kills Denlinger and attempts to kill Paris, who the entity has deemed a threat after Ethan spared her in Venice. Grace, now posing as Alana, negotiates a $100 million deal and protection for herself, but ultimately betrays Kittredge, stealing the key and fleeing. Meanwhile, Ethan parachutes onto the moving train, rescuing Grace from Gabriel's men. The two engage in a brutal fight on top of the train, where Gabriel manages to steal the key. However, in a crucial moment, Ethan pickpockets the key back. As the train approaches a collapsed bridge, Ethan and Grace detach the locomotive, saving the passengers while the rest of the train plunges into the ravine. The two barely escape death as the train cars fall, but Paris, gravely wounded, rescues them just in time. Before losing consciousness, she tells Ethan that the key is connected to the Russian submarine. In the aftermath, Grace chooses to officially join the IMF, informing Kittredge of her decision. Ethan, now in possession of the key, escapes the wreckage by paraglider, rendezvousing with Benji as they prepare to continue the mission to stop the entity. As we count down for the Dead Reckoning Part 2, here is a trailer for you. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Our lives are not defined by any one action. Our lives are the sum of our choices. Everything you are, everything you've done, has come to this.
When the need for certainty is absolute and the odds are deemed impossible, the mission falls to him.
Should he choose to accept?
For every life you tried to save, you gambled millions more. And now the fate of every living soul on Earth is your responsibility.
That's the pattern, isn't it? You refuse to sacrifice the ones you hold close.
You've always been on the right side, brother. I have no regrets. Neither should you.
I need you to trust me one last time.